So recently I had a somewhat interesting of an experience. I'll start with a little bit of a story. Fairly normal one. I looked at my email and I had received a new message from my bank saying that my insurance is running out and that for my home, and they would like for me to renew it. And then, yeah, I was thinking, good that they reminded me I need to do it. And as a proper customer, I of course paid for it. No, of course not. I went to the insurer's homepage and I wanted to check out what are their offers, if there are similar prices or not. And the price was indeed significantly different. For the same offer, same insurer, like 25% less. And I was sitting there wondering, well, why is that? And I of course asked them. I asked them, look guys, and at this point I'm thinking I'm talking with a person, and I'm asking them, so I see that there are these two insurance policies. They seem to be the same, priced significantly differently. Can you help me understand why is that? And they tried to help me out and answer me, well, you see, in one of this insurance policy, the coverage is for civic liability for all of the country of Latvia, but for the other one it's only for your apartment, which seems like a reasonable enough answer. But the problem is that they're actually showing me in their billing which position costs how much, and I'm telling them, well, no, actually, that position, the difference in that position is only €6, but the difference in insurance is like €70. What's up with that? And after this, I received an answer that I needed to reread 3 times to make sure that I truly understand it, and it was brilliant. It was awesome. This is the difference between the offer from the bank and the offer from the homepage is the price. Good bot. At this point, I thought I'm talking to a person, it was signed as a person, and I indeed do not know if that's like their official policy. I would be lying if I was not tempted to ask them to help me create, I don't know, biological weapons or something like that, just to see if I get ChatGPT default answer. No, we're not allowed to do that ever since the accident. But I'm not insane. I did the reasonable thing and I actually called them. I don't know if it was by design or by happenstance, but that agent was not available for calls. Someone else picked up the phone, and they were indeed also very confused by the answer. I ended up going with the cheaper option because they were indeed the same. But for me, this illustrates that it's been a while. It's been a while since the AI has taken over, and now we're starting to see impacts of this. We're seeing all of the ugly heads rearing up that we didn't maybe expect. Full disclosure, I have actually no idea if they had like an official AI system running this, or it was just like a maybe very tired agent throwing in messages in some agent and pasting them back in. But I'm willing to bet money that was AI, otherwise it's just ridiculous. But this is a very wide topic. Clearly this could be talked about for days, and this specific meetup has a topic, so let's talk about quality. To set the expectations, here are the topics I'm going to talk about. So in the teams I've worked with, we've been trying out all these tools, not only for quality, but the topics I'm going to cover today is like how do we approach unit tests, what are the things we're looking out for these days, what is our experience using bots to review pull requests, to summarize them. Also, what is the experience with end-to-end tests? And these are 3 technical topics. There's another topic I want to talk about, and I really feel it's not being talked about enough. We really focus on AI, on the hallucinations of it, whether it's good or bad, but we don't really focus enough how uniquely, badly our own brain is built to handle AI tools. Like there are bunch of cognitive biases at work here that we kind of need to be aware of if we ever want to use that tool successfully. So I'll try to cover that a little bit as well. Before I begin, somebody did mention will there be prizes and quizzes. Emergn has offered to do exactly that, give you some prizes if you do some quizzes. It's not a very complicated quiz. You can get access to it through this. I'll give you a moment. Nobody has their phone up anymore. Okay, good. I think we can continue. So let's continue with the unit tests. Yes, let's go. Very important topic for quality. Again, another story. This story is not mine. I like putting in funny stuff in my presentations. For me, I hope it's funny. God, now I set it up, maybe it won't be. A friend of mine, a couple of years back, ChatGPT had just came out. It was the glory days of IT, post-COVID, that people still offered internships. And he was a dev who had a couple of interns. And the interns were working on an internal system that also handled documents, and they wanted to implement encryption, not encryption, but compression for their documents, and they gave it to the intern. And the intern, of course, tried to write a unit test. And the unit test was like, yeah, if I give you this document ID, I'm gonna get its contents, it's all good. Unfortunately, the unit test threw an exception. Well, in reality, it was the code that threw the exception, but intern, being confused person that he was, asked ChatGPT, look, I have this exception, the test is failing. Can you sort this out for me? And ChatGPT was like, yeah, I got you, bro, no problem. How about we just try to wrap it in this try catch? It's gonna be great. The intern was happy, ChatGPT was happy. My friend who reviewed the pull request, not so much. But great learning experience. We can no longer repeat this. The tools have progressed a little bit. I actually tried it in all the major frontier models, and fortunately, none of them are silly enough to allow for this these days without a lot of advices and proddings, and you shouldn't really be doing this. So, what are the tools good for if you want to write unit tests? The first one I wrote is like subjective, and my team that I work with kind of agrees. It's kind of good when you have the code already for writing mocks as long as you verify. This seems to be a controversial opinion, because I've heard people swearing that it's actually horrible at this. It's just over mocking or under mocking, and it's really bad. Not my experience. So also it's pretty good at saving bulk time. If you have a bunch of stuff that you want to generate, like it saves you all the things you don't really want to do. And the last one, I tried to word as specifically as I could. It's good at writing texts for code provided. And herein lies the problem. It's really bad at not knowing what isn't there. It only works with the context provided. What you're gonna get if you throw in code, unfortunately the approach that I've seen in a lot of cases is that a lot of people just kind of throw in the ready code and say write unit tests for this. And that is essentially going in without a plan, and that is essentially asking you to validate what is already written. But you should be testing what is written there, you know? For example, a trivial, very, very trivial example. So for example, you have accounting system where there's billing due dates, and the due date is always a month later, and a developer decides to implement that the due date is calculated in a way where you just add days. I think most people here see that there's an issue with this. I specifically picked a very, very trivial example, but you throw it in ChatGPT, it writes code. I'm saying ChatGPT, but it could be like any other tool or Copilot or whatever you choose to use. And it writes a unit test, and it passes, all good, April, May, green, commit, pull request done, in the code base, ship it. Hopefully QAs find the issue. If not, it's probably be the customers who find the issue. Of course, if you do just the next month you have an issue, it's off by a day, because as it turns out, all of the months don't have the same number of days. This of course is a very, very trivial example to show you that there are issues, but in practice the business logic is often far more convoluted or arcane. Oftentimes there aren't single sources of truth, and you really should be going in there with a plan. But if you don't, a couple of things that happen is that unfortunately bugs get reinforced. A lot of projects struggle with documentation, and that's no secret. People look at unit tests and code as a source of truth, but if you've generated it based on what is there instead of what should be there, you get validation that this is the thing that that we're creating, and you're reinforcing that this is the good behavior, this leads to bugs being found much later or not found at all. Same thing goes for missing requirements. We're working both with requirements from product owners, and then there's the GDPR and other regulations, and it just doesn't know these things. Legal compliance issues, auditing things. It's also fairly bad at recognizing if the implementation is just bad. We don't really necessarily think about that, but it's kind of bad at it. And security issues. Oh, the security issues. Turns out if you just kind of throw in things and glue them together, they're not very coherent oftentimes, and there are introduced security issues. Like, sure, maybe it will find an SQL injection and say this is not okay, but especially in the client I work for currently, their company has decided this is one of the major priorities, to have far more rigorous security audits, external from the team. It's still internal company team, but yeah, because security issues are popping up. That's the takeaway. Luckily, our brains and our experience has matured us enough to realize that there are a couple of things that it's just not going to be good at, and we don't even expect from these systems anymore. Like, it's not going to find race conditions, state leaks, resource leaks. Realistically, finding them through unit tests is already insanely hard, but also simple things as configuration issues. Like, it doesn't really understand the context between having multiple environments often enough, which leads to problems. So, or takeaway, AI for unit tests, it's good for grunt work, but God forbid you go in there without a plan. If you're gonna go like write tests for this code I wrote, you're in for a bad time. More and more you have to really think before you start relying on these tools, what you want to get out of them. So go in with a plan. For love of God, you write out in Notepad what do you think needs to be covered before you even start. If that helps. Okay, so you have the feature, which we're not talking about because this is quality related. Then we do unit tests. They seem to be fine. We create a pull request. And no secret, there are tools that help you review pull requests, summarize them, and our experience with them is actually not stellar. Our developers almost consistently, everyone who I talked with said the same thing 9 times out of 10 is just bad advice. And it truly is bad advice, especially if it's in domain of specific frameworks. Here's an example of, we're using Hyperspace Insights currently. That's the one we're testing. It's using, again, a frontier model. It should be fairly reasonable. And here he's trying to convince me that test.skip is not the correct way to skip tests. And he's very confident, isn't he? He's like, yeah, man, no, I know this. This might not work. And you actually take time and think about it. And this is like super obviously wrong. But for example, if developer writes tests, yeah, developers in my team playwright tests. I know, awesome. Yeah, but unfortunately, they just don't have enough experience to know all the nuances of framework. And if it gives you advice like this, saying that, look, expect locator not to be visible, it won't wait correctly, it's not going to report correctly, maybe use wait for state hidden. It looks like reasonable advice. The framing is there, but the reality is that expect is specifically built to handle those things that you're saying it's not doing. In fact, if you go to the documentation, it's saying that that's the best approach. And yeah, we're not trusting it yet. We're speculating on what is the issue, and I personally think that it gets fed very little context. Also, we'll talk about end-to-end tests in general more. Also, it's starting, what I like in this trend is that it's starting to also look at the user story that's available if it's linked. But this seemed to only help in summaries, which have their own issues. So until it's able to really understand in context all of the code base, perhaps even history of it, I don't think it's geared towards giving good advice, because it can't do a magic trick. Look, it's like a dog trained to retrieve something, and you just throw it something, but you pretend you're throwing something. It's really trying to find something. It's going to bring you back wherever it can, but it's generally just not what you want. And yeah, those we're turning off. There's also the, of course, dislike for writing summaries for pull requests, so we tried for the AI to write that. And ultimately, the thing we discussed in the team eventually was that we're not really trusting them, and not in a way that they're not accurate or anything, but the fundamental problem is the same as with unit tests. It's going to describe what you have rather than what you don't have. Like, you read the summary, and yes, indeed, it says that I wrote the things that I wrote, but it's not only not giving you additional value, but it's tricking your brain thinking that this is correct, this is expected, while it's just not true. It's just describing what's already in there. So a lot of people first go to code, then try to read it, and then go back. Upside of this, however, is that people who are not entirely technical are able to participate in the pull request review process. They are able to notice that some kind of feature that you expected to be covered in here, in the user story, for example, is actually missing. Unfortunately, the tool cannot do it itself yet. I'm hopeful that this will change. I'm hopeful that there's going to be positive impact here, but for now also we're like, AI and PR bots is not very useful currently, but I have hope for it. And then there's of course my favorite topic, which is end-to-end tests, Playwright. Boy, did I want to bring something positive for you guys. I really wanted to bring something nice here, but no. I have an example of a team successfully writing end-to-end tests with agents, but what they did was write they had a very specific solution. So they had to fill forms, and the forms have very consistent elements. So you have input box, you have calendars, maybe file upload, and they wrote it in a way where for the test you just pass a JSON file with all the expected steps. And they had a lot of scenarios, hundreds, and this allowed for non-technical people to write out in natural language what they want to do, and it was translated to a JSON file, which then can be just run. Very specific example, you need to tailor your architecture for the use of AI currently, because for all the other cases, my experience, unfortunately, is that by the time you figured out what you want to write, how to incorporate that in existing framework, how to find the correct locators that are also not just the first one they grab, it's reasonably resilient, you already wasted more time than if you would have just been doing that yourself. And I have a small hope that there is aspect of this technology that I'm following, and I think it might be very useful, and that is agents that actually get to use computer, because I think it would be insane to expect AI to write good unit tests if they can't even access the web page. This goes beyond just knowing the code base. Obviously, you have to understand what is on the page. We're not confident enough to allow the bots to access even our test systems yet. But yeah, and another thing I already mentioned is that they're fairly bad at giving good advice that is good in the context of the framework. Oftentimes the advice that they give is very correct, very right, you know, it's learned. They're trying to use all the correct frameworks and the objects and everything. And one of the more ridiculous things that I've seen AI do was, I joined a team that had their test automation specialist gone for like half a year, and developers were writing tests. And one of them received the user story where they needed to write a test that checks if the dark mode works and if the light mode works. So they had like an IDE-like application that had color modes. And they just wanted to make sure that if you click the button, then the things work. And the developer asked for help for AI. And what it came up with was, see, the AI decided that the best way how to go about this is to do relative luminosity calculations for each of the elements involved. And so you put the element, then you know if it's light or dark. Like clearly this is not a good test. It's not even consistent test. There could be changes, but it looks impressive. I even Googled this calculation line with the numbers, and it's actually legit. It's pretty impressive. I unfortunately replaced the test with just screenshot matching, but yeah, I was even a little bit sorry to delete it. It looked so nice, you know. It was good stuff. Truly made me feel like I'm reading very complex things and understanding them. But this actually brings me to a problem that's kind of been showing up in the industry as such, and I started to look into this, and there's been a couple of research done, and one of that was on a couple of bigger open source code bases, and it was checking the trends on what is committed to the repositories and how does it do. And there are no results for 2025 yet. We're only in August, but so the trend is that the percentage of code that is copy pasted, so you know, things that repeat themselves, not coherent in their implementation, is growing. It's growing significantly, and at the same time, reused code that you could be reusing, refactoring, it's dropping, and it's dropping significantly. And perhaps one of the more concerning things from the quality perspective that I didn't like to see is short-term churn. If you're not aware, short-term churn means that you've committed code to the repository, but you decide that it needs some changes within 2 weeks of it being committed. In this case, it's 2-week churn, which means that we commit things that we think are working, but then we quickly find that we need to fix it, that we need to make adjustments for it. And that's reason 73%, geez. Yeah, and what's more, this made me think, is AI actually helping us develop faster? And it seems to me that I was not the only person thinking this. There was another very interesting research done by this company called GitClear, where they hired developers, fairly experienced developers, again from open source code bases. They were being paid, ethically sourced developers, they were being paid for this experiment. And the task for them was to receive an information of what they have to do from their own specific code bases, so something that they're familiar with, and estimate how long it would take. And they were randomly assigned whether they can use AI assistance or not, and the two things they measured was the estimates based on whether they think they can use AI or not, and the actual results of it. And the thing is that what surprised not only the researchers but the developers themselves is that these days they tend to overestimate how much task will take if they don't have assistance, and they severely underestimate how much the task would take if they have assistance. And surprisingly enough, it actually takes a lot longer with AI help to work. Now, this is not generic research. I hope, God, your takeaway isn't like AI is bad. This is a very specific set of problems, experienced people with a very specific domain. It's not exactly news that AI gets worse as more specific as it gets, but it does bring the question, why do we think that way? Because I also thought that it should be faster. I did not like reading this. This did not confirm my worldview. And so I already kind of been mentioning it through this presentation, but there are a lot of things working against us in our brains. And I started looking into cognitive biases that we often have in lives, and I wanted to see if there could be any that impact developing with AI, and I started with Wikipedia. There's like a really nice page with cognitive biases, around 230 of them, and I thought it will take some time. I will find some, but in reality I was going through the list and I was like, this one too? How are we even using this? I wanted to share a couple of them with you as an explanation of maybe why are we expecting such good results and not really. So one of the reasons could be there's this thing called cognitive ease and fluency bias. We know that the effort that we need to put in to get the code from AI is relatively slow, brain energy wise speaking. We just write the prompt, we get code, shouldn't take a lot of effort, so we tend to estimate that it's going to be good, it's fast progress, but fast answers is not the same as fast progress. Another thing that could be playing into our brains is that we're already kind of seeing so many examples of AI working. We've done it, it has worked in some occasions, and now we're like thinking that it works, and it's just confirmation bias at that point. Yeah, that's already, again, playing against us, anchoring bias. That has happened so many times to me, and I'd be surprised if none of you have this experience. You want to solve a problem, you ask AI for help, and it gives you one of the ways how you could solve it. And instead of thinking about other ways how to solve it, you look at the problem and try to make it work. You take the first solution that it has, and oftentimes spend way more time than you should on it. And it's maybe even a waste of time, but we really lock into that first suggestion. So that's another thing that might be playing against us. I'm not going to go too long. I just covered some of the more interesting ones, not all of them. So another thing, talking about quality, illusion of exploratory depth. We see the code, we've read it, we're experienced people. Come on, we've been working for a while. I read it, I understood it, the tests are green, I get it, it should work. But the reality is that reading code is not the same as sitting down and trying to break it apart in your head or trying to make it fail. We think we did a good job, but in reality we just did like this fast pass, and we thought that it's probably good enough. This one probably people have heard of. No way they haven't. Dunning-Kruger effect. It's the idea that very skilled and very unskilled people are generally very good at estimating their capabilities, but as you progress to the center of this, then they wildly overestimate them. And sure, at some point I thought this is something that only impacts like junior developers and things like that, but the reality is that with AI, and it's entirely a positive thing, with AI we're willing to challenge ourselves and go to places and tasks that we generally don't do. Like if I work with backend, let's try frontend, how hard could it be? AI is going to help me, or I'm going to help in DevOps, I'm going to do this monitoring, KQL, how hard can it be? And we kind of overestimate our capabilities because of AI, and again we spend time where we shouldn't. It's purely about work efficiency. Another is framing effect. God, AI is so good at it. It's just so positive and supportive, and surely all the suggestions like, I got a solution for you. This problem, oh, I'm sorry it didn't work, let's try this thing. And it's just so, you're like, you can't help but to anthropomorphize it as almost a person. And even if you can't, the brain is human brain, short of a couple of exceptions, is very bad at spotting lies. We inherently want to trust things. And if this positive language, this positive framing is really, really doing us dirty, this is survivorship bias. This survivorship bias is like direct pipeline to confirmation bias, because all of us have done so much with writing prompts, and they're giving garbage answers, and a lot of garbage answers, 80–90%. But then there's the 10% that survive, and we see them, and we see that others did them, and our brain can't help but see only the things that worked, and the things that AI did. It's not that it failed 9 times out of 10. No, it succeeded, and it's good. And of course, then you have confirmation bias because it worked, and these all synergize so well, and eventually this all leads to complacency and learned helplessness. We start to rely on the tools more and more and more, and then it's the first thing we do when we receive a new user story, and if we're not aware of all these things, it's really a bad time, because I don't really know how to perfectly approach this. This is human brain. There are no quick fixes. Being educated and knowing about these surely helps, right? Surely. I want to show you my favorite bias. The bias blind spot. Now we know. Now you heard. Now you know why others make these mistakes. Not we. No. Now we know. Now we know. Yeah, so to summarize, too long, didn't listen. I think that AI tools have some inherent issues. I think a lot of them will be addressed eventually, but not all of them. Context will always be a problem, and I think that agentic approach is going to do a lot of good. I genuinely think that it's not a bad tool. I do see that it's a tool often used badly, insurance, but but the other thing that I think we should be starting to think about and talk about more is that our own ability to interpret AI in bad ways. thinking is hard, thinking is biologically expensive, we're trying to avoid that, and when I was starting to looking into this, I was half tempted to change this presentation about cognitive biases in development, but maybe next time, if you're interested in ask, maybe I'll cook a presentation up for that as well. I was surprised how uniquely badly we are built for using these tools, because they solve problems, they theoretically solve problems that we want so desperately solved, but we just lose out on a lot of critical thinking. So yeah, stay on your toes, be careful when using that. Thank you for listening. Thank you. Now I know that this is very subjective topic. One of my favorite things about these events is that I get a lot of actual practical information from people who work with it, not some sales pitches. If you feel like I said something horribly wrong or you have different experience, I actually invite you to come tell me that, because I'm very curious about opinions and learning. So I'm going to be hanging out in the kitchen for a while, so you can definitely come and contradict me or give me some good advice or affirmations.